Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to see you and to be together this evening. Wonderful. So glad you're all here. Wonderful. We begin as always with a question that's come from our global family joining us online, who can't be here physically, but they are joining us in our Sangha through Facebook, through YouTube, through other channels, and they send questions in advance. So I always like to start with one of those to remind them that even though they're not physically here, they are with us in heart and spirit. I'm trying to follow the path of devotion, but due to many reasons, I suffer deep resentment, fear, and self-hatred. I read scriptures, but in the Shastras, nothing is written about self-love. If it is, then please guide me. How, in service of a loving God, can I fully love myself with all my imperfections? I'm going to read it again. It was a bit intricate. I am trying to follow the path of devotion, but due to some reason, I suffer from deep resentment, fear, and self-hatred. I read scriptures, but nothing in Shastras is written about self-love. If it is, then please guide me. How, in service of a loving God, can I fully love myself with all my imperfections? The Shastras, in a way, you could say they are all about self-love. But they're about self-love of the capital S self. So all of our scriptures are guiding us to the true self. They're all about overcoming ignorance, about letting go of illusion, all about learning to find the true self. If you read the Upanishads, right, each of them in its own way is a different way of pointing us back inside to that which is real, that which is true, that which is eternal, that which is not born or dies, not changing, but actually that which is the truth. So, although it doesn't speak about self-love per se in those terms, it's all about love your capital S self. That's why you need to discover it. That's why you need to know it. If it weren't divine, if it weren't lovable, why would you spend your whole life learning about it? Why would you spend your whole life looking for it? Nobody ever would say, I have an idea. Spend the next 60, 70 years of your life looking for something. And by the way, it's really, right? If you're going to guide somebody to spend their entire lives looking for something, discovering something, obviously, that something is very special and beautiful. Otherwise, why bother? If that which you're going to find at the end of your lifelong search, the end of all your hours of sadhana, is not so nice, could be a lot better. Why would we do that? So by nature of the fact that we are being guided to spend our lives, our time, our energy, discovering the true self, inherent in that instruction is the fact that that self is not only lovable, but is everything, is the divine. But what this beautiful questioner is referring to, though, isn't the capital S self. It's the lowercase s self. Because when we talk about the capital S self, there are no imperfections. Our divine self, the soul, the spirit, has no imperfections. So when she speaks about resentment and pain from something that's happened in her past, it's a lowercase s self that she's talking about. And the dilemma with that is that we get focused on the imperfections of this lowercase s self, the ego self, the temporary, that which is born, that which dies, that which changes, this body, this story. Well, remember that self is human, right? We have two selves. We have the capital S self that's divine, never born, never dies, what Bhagwan Krishna speaks about in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, right? Cannot be wet by water or cut by knives or dried by the wind, burned with fire. So we've got that self that is eternal, that is divine. And then we've got our lowercase s self, which is our human self. Now, when we realize and remember it's human, by nature it's imperfect. Anything that is always changing by nature has to be imperfect. Because if it's perfect and it changes, then by definition it wouldn't be perfect anymore. So that which is constantly changing by definition can't be perfect and eternal. So our human self, of course, is imperfect. That's why we're here. It's why we've taken birth. We're all here because we are working out some karmic package. We've got karmic debts of our previous births that we're here to work through. Some sweet fruit to eat, some not so sweet fruit to eat. By nature, the human self is a composition of that which we've learned, that which has happened to us, our families of origin, our cultures of origin, our experiences. They all create what we call sanskaras, or impressions, or patterns. Sometimes they become deep, we call them neuroses, pathologies. But it's all created by impressions that have been formed upon us, of people around us, experiences we've had, things that we've learned from the world, taken in from the world. So when you say you're imperfect, of course you are. You're human. Welcome to the human race. Nobody ever says, this human self must be perfect. What you offer to God is the imperfection of the humanness, with the awareness that God is perfect, which means that if God has created you, in God's eyes you are perfect. We see imperfections. Too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too dark, too fair, too this, too that. Get angry too much. Lose my temper, feel jealous, have depression, get frustrated, I'm lazy. And it's good to be aware of those things so that then we can work on them. But God isn't up there judging you. Because what God is seeing is God in you. So remember that in every moment that you're looking at your imperfections, you're literally saying, well, if I'm imperfect, it means God's imperfect, right? Because God's created me. And if I believe that God is perfect, then I have to believe that at least in God's eyes, I am perfect. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I love that. Yes, you are. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yes, you are. And don't allow the past resentment, the past pain, to bind you today. That's your work that you've got to let that go. You've got to forgive. Forgive yourself, forgive others, forgive the universe. Whatever that experience was, you've had it, you've learned from it, it's changed you. Let it go. Not the lessons, keep the lessons. But let go of the resentment, let go of the pain, let go of the anger. I know the asker of this question, so I know that you have heard me speak so many times about my personal experience with that and how important it is to let go. And that we all can, not because what happened is okay, but because we deserve to be free. And all of the pain and all of the resentment and all of the grudges and all of the anger actually keeps us from being free. So whether it's something that you've done that you're feeling guilty about, whether it's something someone else did that you're feeling angry and a grudge about, either way, it's keeping you stuck. So you offer the imperfections to God. You offer everything to God with the awareness that God, the perfect, accepts it all. Not only accepts it, wants it, is waiting for us to come to God, to offer ourselves to God. As Pujya Swamiji always says, God doesn't open your old files. That when you go to God, whatever the past is, it's over. That all God is waiting for is for you to go to God with full surrender. And that God doesn't open the old file. So God's not going to go back and say, this thing. And so you need to let yourself become free of that. And to know that today you are this extraordinary, divine, amazing being. And whatever happened in the past has been a lesson, an impression. And now how to take that and be even stronger, even deeper, even more aware, even more compassionate. And offer it all to God. If He refuses to accept it, you come back and let me know. But He won't. I promise. If anyone here has any questions, I would be happy to take them. she's gone to sleep. Yes. He's going to just give you the microphone.
प्रणाम. मैं हिंदी में पूछ सकती हूँ?
हाँ, बिल्कुल.
दो दुविधाएं हैं. एक तो ये कि सालों से हम देखते हैं, हजारों सालों से ऋषि मुनि गाय का दूध पी के भी तपश्चर्या करते थे, पर अभी वो वेगन का सब चला है ना, तो सब लोग बोलते कि गाय का दूध वो सब लेना भी हिंसा है, तो नहीं पीना चाहिए. तो अभी थोड़ा दुविधा हो गया है कि क्या करे. और दूसरी एक दुविधा है कि अभी सालों से हम बचपन से गंगा में दीप बहाते हैं, तो अभी 2 दिन पहले ही मैं इधर से ये अपनी आरती हुई, फिर सत्संग से मैं और आगे गई घाट पे, तो वहाँ एक महाराज जी कुछ आरती पूजा करवा रहे थे. तो उन्होंने बोला, वो आरती कर रहे थे, मैं बैठ गई वहाँ जाके, तो उन्होंने बोला कि आप गंगा में दीप बहाते हो तो वो भी एक प्रकार का कचरा है, क्योंकि दीप जब बुझ जाता है तो फिर कचरा हो जाता है. तो मैं आपसे प्रार्थना करता हूँ कि आप लोग गंगा में दीप ना बहाए. आपको गंगा की आरती करनी है तो दीप लगा के आप साइड में रखिए. तो अभी वो भी दुविधा हो गई कि अब बचपन से अब तक हम लोग बहाते थे, तो अभी क्या करना चाहिए. ये 2 दुविधाएं हैं, कृपा करें आप. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. प्रणाम.
प्रणाम. Beautiful questions. Beautiful questions. यदि मैं आंसर्स अंग्रेजी में दूं तो समझ पाएंगे, है ना? वंडरफुल. ओके.
आप हिंदी बोलते हैं ना तो बहुत प्यारा लगता है.
बात यह है,
अंग्रेजी में बोलते हैं ना तो मुझे वो हिंदी सुनना है.
बात तो मैं थोड़ी सी हिंदी में भी बोलूँगी. बात यह है कि इतने लोग विदेश से देख रहे जो समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं, तो उनकी वजह से तो इसलिए सब कुछ अंग्रेजी में होता है. But she's asked 2 very beautiful questions, both related to things that she's been doing her whole life, or for even before her life, that now she's being told not to do. The first is, she said, for thousands of years, our rishis and munis and sages all extolled the benefits of milk from a cow, that this is nectar, this is amrit. But now people are saying, don't drink milk because it's violence. So that was her first question. We'll come to the second one after that. बात यह है कि उसी समय, हजारों साल पहले, thousands of years ago, even hundreds of years ago, even 50 years ago, in India, even maybe 20 years ago, the way that cows were kept was very different. Families had a cow. The cow was a member of the family. The cow was treated beautifully, fed beautifully, treated with love. When the cow had a baby, the baby would drink the milk first. Then, jo bacha hua tha, people drank it. The cows never were given steroids or anything like that. No chemicals, nothing. They were just given good food. And they spent their days roaming around on the grass, eating grass, being outside in the pastures and the fields. Now what has happened is, and I don't know all of the history, but my guess would be approximately it's been going on in America maybe 50, 60 years or so. In the mid-1980s, a book was written in America called Diet for a New America by a man named John Robbins, who was the son of Baskin-Robbins ice cream. Okay, so very famous ice cream. His father was Mr. Robbins and his uncle was Mr. Baskin. So he wrote a whole book on the horrible way that the cows were treated in their dairy farms. So that was mid-80s. So say it had been going on, I don't know, maybe let's call it 20 years before that, approximately. Again, I'm not a historian on that. But in India, I think it's much more recent. In India, I'm going to guess and call it 20 years. Maybe 30. But in the scheme of thousands and thousands of years, 20, 30 years is nothing. But what's happened is that milk has become factory produced. The cows who give milk are born to give milk. They are kept inside in factories, chained at the neck, kept in boxes. They are injected full of steroids, injected full of antibiotics because the conditions are so bad they keep getting sick. Now, in order for a cow to give milk, she has to be pregnant. That's why she gives milk, the same way that women give milk. It's not just I'm a woman, so I'm going to give milk. Getting pregnant is what starts that process. Now, in traditional India, you'd have a cow, there'd be a bull, the bull would impregnate the cow the way nature intended. It was all very natural. The way that it happens now in these factories, and there have been so many documentaries done on this, it's basically rape. The men working in the factories, literally, kehna nahi chahiye, lekin aapne pucha, they literally take their arms and they stick them, they've got a needle, it's artificial insemination, but they literally stick, with no anesthesia, no nothing, they stick their arms all the way inside the cow and actually inseminate up into the uterus. And if you see in these videos, it's literally like they're raping women. If you hear what they are saying about these cows as they're doing it, just say a man would yell at a woman who he's raping in the same way these men are yelling at these cows as they are doing with their hands. Over the last 10, 20 years, there have been so many sting operations. So now these days it's even easier. But even before, so many people have gone in with cameras, with videos of what it's like. So milk has now become an industrially produced commodity. It's violent. And when the cows stop giving milk, because a cow only gives milk for a few years. It used to be she stopped giving milk. Tika. She still stayed. She was there. Now they are killed immediately. And they become beef. The dairy industry and the beef industry and the veal industry are all one. When that pregnant cow gives birth, her calves do not drink, not one drop, because that milk is money. The cows are taken away immediately at birth, and the cow cries. I mean, you should see these videos. You can hear these cows crying. It's a mother, she's given birth. Unki bachi hai. Immediately after birth, the child is taken away. And then, because veal is such an expensive commodity, you get a lot more money for a piece of veal than you do for a hamburger. Well, veal is very, very, very tender. That's why they call it tender veal cutlets. Very, very, very soft baby cow. Well, but it's soft because there's no muscle. When the cow stands to drink from its mother, it develops muscles. So they literally take these calves they bury them in sand up to here, or they stick them in a cage where they literally can't stand up. Because every bit of them that develops muscle, it's no longer tender. It's no longer soft. Muscle is hard. And they force feed these calves to get big and fat. And then they kill them. So it used to be that even though we didn't eat beef, drinking milk was totally separate. People who kept cows did not then kill the cows and eat the cows. But now the dairy industry and the meat industry have become one. So that's the big reason for it, is the dairy industry now has become an industry of violence. It is no longer reverence. It is no longer Go Mata. It has become an industry of violence. For me, on a personal level, I was a vegan, means don't drink milk, even before I moved to India 25 years ago. When I came here to the ashram, where we have our own cows, and the cows are treated like members of the family, obviously the babies drink first, the babies stay with the mothers. Jo bachue hai, humko peena ka mauka milte. And after they stop giving milk, they still are kept. We always say it's like a cow old age home and cow child care. And like, so one part Goshala, where they give milk, one part, child care center, one part old age home. But I don't drink milk anywhere else. Unless I'm at someone's house who has their own cow. And I know that cow is treated like a member of the family with love, whatnot. But that's very rare that people still have cows. Some do. Most don't. But otherwise, I don't drink milk anywhere in the world. For that reason. But there's also a whole other element to it, which I have found very interesting, because you mentioned the hinsa aspect, the aspect of violence. But there's also a whole trend now in health and wellness that actually says that milk is bad for you. If you go to any holistic medicine practitioner in the West, they will tell you, give up dairy, give up sugar, give up gluten, right? But dairy is right up there. Every healthcare wellness program says no dairy. And the reason for that, it took me a long time, because I was like, Ayurveda says it's great for us. But all of this, it's horrible for you. That's a different reason. That has to do with what's called A1 and A2 milk. Of cows. Jo go bolte hain is actually a different type of cow. Those are the types of cows that the science of Ayurveda says this milk is nectar. The ones that have the hump. The cows that don't have the hump, but if the desi go is treated like a member of the family, then by Ayurveda it is considered Amrit. Yes. But from a hinsa perspective, tragically, even in India now, and again, not everywhere. At Bibi in India, there's some dairies that are still rooted in respect, but it's quite rare. And the question, of course, becomes, when those cows stop giving milk, to fir kya hota hai? Because economically, remember, for a company to be feeding an animal that it gets nothing from is not a very viable economic model. So I imagine, if you're running a dairy, it's a business. And so when the cows stop giving milk, The only thing that makes economic sense, if that's your model, is to sell it to become beef, exactly. So by drinking milk, then you're literally putting money in the pockets of the people who are killing cows to eat them. So that's the reason for that. The second question she asked, similar in theme but different in context, is that she was raised offering diyas, lamps, light, into Mother Ganga, into the waters. But here, when she went down to offer one, the priest there said, please don't, because this is pollution in the river. And when that light gets extinguished, the whole candle, the diya, all of that, the whole boat you have floated it in, that becomes pollution. Now, there was a time, not that long ago, since India's been independent, in which our rivers flowed very high, very clean, very beautifully. Population was very less. Water was much more. And chalo, you put in usi samay, wo sab mitti ki diya hote the. Usi samay there was no styrofoam. Nobody was putting aluminum foil diyas or styrofoam diyas. Hote nahi tha usi samay. At that time it was all eco-friendly anyway. It was a leaf boat, mitti ki diya. So anyway, those are biodegradable. Now it's all, even if the boat is made of leaves, the diya is in this metal thing. It's got plastic underneath it. So the diya itself is no longer natural and biodegradable. But also what's happened is that our rivers have become much lower. The water is much less. People are far too many. And so what's happening is between the sewage, between the industrial pollution, between the river water getting diverted to grow things like rice in places where we don't have enough water, but because chawal khana hai, the water level is very low. And the river is getting more and more polluted, so the pollutants are at a higher dilution. Agar itni si pollution or itni si jal, not a big deal. But jab itni si jal or itni si pollution, then we're stuck. So that's where we've been very, very vocal about not putting anything in Ganga. Anything in Ganga at all. Because the water is getting too polluted, too less. And so now it's become everybody's responsibility. Even flowers, which are biodegradable. We don't even offer flowers into Ganga anymore. Because even though it's biodegradable, nonetheless, it still chokes up the flow of the river. So, yeah, we offer the diya of our heart. Jo kabhi bujhte nahi. Anyway. So we keep the heart. The heart is burning in love and devotion. And we keep the river flowing clean. But they're both, beautiful questions. And I was speaking, I think it was last night. Maybe 2 nights ago, but I think it was last night. We were talking about truth. And we were talking about that which is right and wrong. And how I was saying it's based on context. And that context changes. And you've raised 2 very beautiful real life examples. There was a time when drinking milk was nectar. And definitely not violent. Rather, it was beneficial to you. Harmless to the cow, who was just another member of the family who happened to have extra milk after her babies drank. But now drinking milk has become violence. There was a time when putting a lamp in Ganga was an act of devotion. It's now an act of pollution. So you've given us two very beautiful examples of exactly what we were talking about. Wonderful. Does anyone else have a question? Just one moment. Absolutely. Beautiful. Beautiful. Kab tak hai wo? Huh? They're only here 10 minutes. Okay. Unko yahan kahan? Haan. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. We've been running training programs. We do a lot of community training programs of primarily women and girls around life skills, around empowerment, around sanitation and hygiene and livelihoods and things. And she's our coordinator, and there's a whole group of ASHA workers who are here, who have been here in a training, and they were being shown one of the things that we do is in our menstrual hygiene awareness program is eco-friendly pads. Because when you've got no menstrual hygiene and no menstrual hygiene education, then you end up with girls who don't go to school, girls who end up having to drop out of school because they miss so much school during their menstrual periods that they end up dropping out. You end up with illness, you end up with disease, you end up with shame, you end up with disempowerment. So we've been doing a large campaign over the last several years around menstrual hygiene. But the answer is not as simple as maxi pads, because we're also very active in environmental protection, environmental cleanliness. And if you solve one problem, girls dropping out of school and women who are disempowered, with just maxi pads, then you just simply create a different problem, which is all of this pollution. And then, of course, a lot of the menstrual pad companies, they say, oh, well, we give incinerators along with it. And we think, well, then all you've done is you've taken land pollution and turned it into air pollution. So all we're doing is substituting one problem for another. We're not actually solving anything. So one of the things that we've been very active in is eco-friendly, reusable pads. So cloth pads that are reusable, eco-friendly. So turns out we had a whole bunch of them in our store, and I guess they were being shown them, and now all the women want them. So before they go, we can all go together after satsang and distribute them to them. She just wanted permission that we can distribute our stock of the menstrual pads to the women who are here. So we have time for one more question if anyone has one. Yes.
Pranam. So I just wanted to ask you, whatever you're telling us and whatever wisdom or knowledge which we gain seems to be touching us somewhere, no doubt. But then when again we get back into our roles of, whatever we do, we don't seem to be reaching anywhere. We still have all those same issues.
Yes.
And no matter how much we try, it seems to be a very difficult path to follow. And how do we, bridge that?
Beautiful. It is very difficult. The mind is amazing. And the mind works in patterns. We talk about them as sanskaras. Neurologically, we speak about them as patterns or neural networks. And they literally become like grooves in our psyche. We have automatic ways that we act. They've become autopilot. We don't even have to think about it. The things that make us angry, we are angry. The things that make us upset, we are upset. Our habitual way of acting, habitual way of speaking. We don't think about it. It's not like we're making a decision every moment. We're on autopilot most of the time in these patterns. And so yes, we come, we learn, and then we go back and we're back in our patterns. Well, and that's why it's so important to create a new pattern, a new sanskara, a new way. Not easy, but absolutely doable. It just takes time and it takes attention until that becomes your new way. If you are used to sleeping in really late every day and you decide you're going to start getting up and you're going to meditate. So in the beginning it's going to be really hard. The body, the mind are going to scream, no, no, no. Let me stay in bed. And if you give in, then you'll never develop a new habit. But if you just for the first couple of weeks literally force yourself out of bed, whatever it takes, by hook or crook, what you'll find is that you will set a new pattern, a new way. That it becomes easier day by day. If you've got a habit of getting angry, of yelling, if you've got a habit of yelling when somebody does something, well, if you allow yourself to keep yelling, you'll keep yelling. But if you decide from now on, no yelling, and even if you get halfway through a sentence and then you remember, oh, no yelling, and you stop, slowly, slowly, you will develop a whole new way of being. But it's going to take some time. It's a new habit. It's a whole new habit. It's like if you break your arm, and your arm is in a cast, you're right-handed, and you break your right hand, it's in a cast. Well, on day one, if you try to sign your name with your left hand, you're nowhere. But if your arm's been in a cast for a month or 6 weeks, by the end of those 6 weeks, you find you actually can sign your name quite nicely with your left hand. You've developed a new groove. The brain has literally changed to enable you to develop this new way of being. And so for you, while you're here, lay a new pattern. If you allow it to just stay like upad ka gyan, then it's not going to trickle down and change you. But if you allow it to actually go deep, and you allow yourself after satsang then to introspect, make it yours, make it personal. Yes, there was wisdom, but what does that mean for me? It's not gyan for gyan's sake. It's what does it mean in my life? Allow yourself to really contemplate that while you're here. See what it means for the patterns of your life while you're here. While you're here, think about what you're going to change. What will be different? Write it down. And start it while you're here. Make it really specific. This is what I've understood. Therefore, this is how I'm going to change. Write down what you've learned. Keep it with you. So that then every night before you sleep, you can relearn. It doesn't have to be pages and pages. It can be bullet points. But that which impacted you. Because what I've seen with satsang is everyone walks away with the parts that are meant for them. And so many people in such different life circumstances say, that was exactly what I needed to hear. But they've heard it for very different reasons, and they've even heard different things. So note down what it means for you. Where are going to be the places in your life that you're likely to get stuck? That you're likely to fall back? And then it's just a matter of being conscious. When you enter those moments again, can you enter them consciously? Knowing, oh yeah, this is one of those challenging situations where I'm likely to slip back. It's like they always say, going back into the family. You come to an ashram, you go on a meditation retreat, there's all this beautiful awakening, and then people go back into their families, right? So we know families are challenges. So be aware of that, recognize that. Okay, what are my triggers? Tomorrow's the full moon. Tonight, a beautiful full moon night. For our family joining us from all over the world, have a beautiful morning, beautiful day, and look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow.